Okay, so we now welcome on the Power of the Towel podcast, part of the Next Misconduct Network. Our guest today is the co-host of the LarschCast, which you can find wherever you get podcasts, and it's also on Sportsnet 650. It's Nav Dosanjh. Nav, how's it going today, man?
I'm doing well, man. Nick, how are you doing? Thank you for having me on.
It's my pleasure. And first off, I know before we start talking hockey, I know you're a Packers fan. All right. So I just want to ask, like, you okay, bro? Like, do we need to talk this out before we start talking hockey?
You know what? Not even only am I a Packer fan, but if you've read some of my tweets or, listened to the LarschCast, I'm a Seahawk hater.
Okay.
So everyone came out this week, my buddies, friends, people that I don't even like, my fellow podcasters, just like, oh, I deserved it. I deserved it this week. But not only did they lose, it's the way they lost. Just terrible. I mean, I make fun of Pete Carroll every week. Every time he coaches, I think he makes really dumb decisions. But you know what? It's karma to me that my coach made a Pete Carroll decision there at the end and went for the field goal when, anybody else would have gone for the touchdown. But it's been a rough week. But you know what? At least the Canucks are doing better. So a little bit better. But yeah, the Sunday was not fun.
I remember, just watching the game and, they go for a field goal. I thought they were like going, I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, what? Like, you want to really give Tom Brady, like, you really trust Tom Brady to not, get a first down and to not end the game. Like, it just seemed like a weird decision. And I know Kyle's going to be listening to this. He's a big Packers fan as well. We're just twisting the knife right now with this.
To me, it's like, the stupidest decision. There's two. Like, you have, to me, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. You got Aaron Rodgers. I mean, like, he's not like a Goff. He's not like a guy you can't trust. He's Aaron Rodgers. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. He's got the best arm. He's one of the smartest quarterbacks of all time. So number one, you don't trust him. And then number two, like you said, you give the ball back to the GOAT. Like, there's no way. I mean, your defense, you could have the best defense in the league, and the Packers don't. They have one of the most average defenses in the league, and it was terrible that day. And you're going to trust your defense against the GOAT as opposed to, Aaron Rodgers. So, I mean, it was just a stupid decision all around. They deserve to lose. It is what it is. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I know. You know what? It sets up a great Super Bowl next Sunday with Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes, and we can get to that some other point. But let's talk some Canucks hockey. This is the Canucks podcast, Power of the Towel, part of the Next Misconduct Network.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're recording this on Friday. Canucks just swept the Ottawa Senators in the 3-game series. Where are we with the panic button now compared to before the Sens series? Are we still where are we at the panic button before the Sens series?
Yeah.
I said they got to win at least 2 of 3, right? They got to go at least 2 of 3, preferably in regulation. And for me, the panic button before that series, it was on the desk.
Yeah.
I was staring at it. I wasn't ready to push it quite yet. It's on the desk. It's within reach. I'm staring at it, not pushing it. I can see it. Now I think the panic button is somewhere across the room. It's not easily accessible anymore.
Yeah.
But I still know where it is. Where are you with the Canucks right now in terms of the panic button?
You know, I'm not even sure if I was panicked before this three game set against the Ottawa Senators. I mean, I remember sending out a tweet right before the series began. It's like, yes, Vancouver needs to sweep the Ottawa Senators. They need to sweep them in regulation. But if they do, and hopefully when they do, it won't mean anything. Because, like, we know, I mean, Ottawa was terrible. I mean, we saw these last 3 games. I mean, they're like an AHL team. Like, I don't want to feel bad for them because, we've been there before, but they're bad. I mean, they scored 3 goals in 3 games and we outscored them 16-3. I mean, I wasn't panicked before. I think the panic button is exactly where it was before these 3 games. It's in a room. I know exactly, like you said, I know where it is. I can get into the room. It's not locked. But my concern is how they play this Saturday. I mean, we never play well against the Winnipeg Jets anyway. So this could probably be, there couldn't be a better matchup. I mean, if we were playing Calgary or Edmonton or Montreal, we come out and beat them. I don't know if that means anything, but we're playing the Winnipeg Jets, a team that for years, even when we were a good team, a bad team, we always get our butts kicked. So this Saturday is a true test. I mean, if they come out and they even compete, say they lose the game 3-2, 4-3, whatever, I'm cool with that. But if they come out and get their butts kicked like they usually do against the Jets, especially in Winnipeg, by 3-4 goals, then there's some serious concern to this season to say, like, hey, listen, they beat the Senators. And they beat the Senators, but they're allowing, 40 shots a game. So, I mean, there's concern. There's definite concern. So I think we'll have a true answer probably by Saturday night, Sunday morning, what this team is going to be. So I know where the panic button is, but hopefully I don't have to go into that room.
Yeah, and Kyle and I talked about this last night on the post-game show, Sipping on 40. Winnipeg is almost like Vegas away When in a sense, like we always see the Canucks always seem to have, terrible games in Winnipeg. Like it seems to be kind of like that Vegas. I don't know what it is about Winnipeg. Maybe they don't want to be there in January. I don't know, but like it's just every time the Canucks go to Winnipeg, it seems to be a bad performance. And you mentioned the team, I think just the Canucks are getting a break here because obviously the Jets will still not have Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Yeah.
And they're not going to have Patrick Laine as well because of the trade. Yeah. So you're getting a bit of a break there in the sense you don't have to go against, one of the best 1-2 punches, I think, down the middle in the league when Pierre-Luc Dubois does get back in the lineup. At the same time, you mentioned it, Canucks don't usually play that well in Winnipeg.
And I don't get it. Like you said, like maybe they don't want to be in, Winnipeg, but like you said, it's the anti-Vegas. Like I can understand if you go to Vegas, any team that goes to Vegas, if you've been to Vegas, you're probably not going to have a good game because you're out the night before. I don't care if you have a curfew. You're going to go out in Vegas. You're not going to be in your room. What is there to do in Winnipeg? I mean, if that's the excuse, maybe they don't want to be in Winnipeg, but they got a good team. Ehlers. I hate to bring up Ehlers because it brings back bad memories of Jake Virtanen. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But, they got a top six is probably one of the best in the league. And they all play together. Now they brought the Stastny back from Vegas. They're scary top six. They're the top six that you want. Their top six probably scares me more than even like the Edmonton top six, because Edmonton's just got two great players and the rest of them, are fourth line plugs in my opinion, or third line players. But the top six for Winnipeg, they're just going to get better. They're three centers. Now, who do they have? They got Dubois, they got all these guys. Now they got Stastny's going to be their third center.
Yeah.
That team scares me. That's a scary team to me. I had them ranked a little bit lower at the beginning of the year, and I'll admit I was wrong. I think to me, they're going to be right there behind Toronto in the regular season, because I think Montreal will kind of come down a little bit. We're lucky we don't play. That's one of the teams, if you look at the schedule, we don't play them multiple times. Like we play Calgary 4 times in a row, Edmonton 3 times in a row, Toronto. I think Winnipeg, the most we ever play them is maybe 2 times in a row, and none of them are back-to-back. So we're glad that we don't have to see them that much, because they're going to be a good team.
I think the thing that still kind of concerns me about Winnipeg, though, is their defense. Like, I'm sure they have all these great forwards, but their defense, like, I think the Canucks may have better defensive depth than the Jets, and that's saying something, right? And obviously they have a great goalie, but you can't expect a guy like Connor Hellebuck, I don't think, to perform to the same level as he was last year. Like, he was all world last year, and to say, like, you need to perform at that same level, it may or may not work out. And you mentioned that it's a big game against the Jets coming up on Saturday. Look, the Jets still have 3 games in hand against the Vancouver Canucks. And that's the biggest thing that concerns me going forward, is all these teams have games in hand. Like I'm looking at the division right now. Canucks have played 10 games. Oilers have played 9. The Jets, they're going to be battling with this team probably for that 3rd, 4th spot. They've played 7. I think it's going to be like, I'll admit I was completely wrong about the Sens before this series. I watched a couple of their games. They beat Toronto. They almost beat the Jets. I thought they were going to be pesky. I thought they would be like a somewhat competitive team. That's not the case. They're going to be the clear bottom of this division. But I think it's honestly between the Jets, the Oilers, and maybe even put the Flames in there. The Flames are 2-3-1 right now at the time of recording, but they've only played 6 games. So they have 4 games in hand. So I still think like they can be in the conversation as well. So pains me to say it, Toronto's probably going to be the best team in the division. They're probably winning. It pains me to say it, but Toronto's probably going to win I'm not saying they're going to have playoff success.
No.
Not saying that at all. But they will probably win the division, Montreal second. I think that's how it's going to shape up, right? So now the rest of the season, it's about being better than the Jets, the Oilers, and the Flames. If you can be better than those teams, you probably have a shot at making the playoffs.
I don't think they're going to be better than the Jets, because I've said that team scares me, but it's
now with Dubois,
it's Edmonton, Calgary, and I know Montreal's just they're just guns a-blazing right now, but I think they're going to come down to earth a little bit. I'm not saying I think they're a playoff team. I think they were going to be on the bubble. I thought they'd kind of miss, but I think they're going to be in that 3 to 5 spot, right? They're going to come down. They're not as good as they've played, just like the Canucks aren't as bad as they've played defensively. I think they're somewhere in the middle. Teams will figure them out. I'm not really high on the Montreal defense. I'm not. You got Shea Weber there, but he's another year older. Petrie's pretty good, and the goalies are good. Carey Price, I think, obviously not playing 70 games this year with Jake Allen there. I think he'll be better, but I'm not sold on their defense. Their offensive lineup is pretty good, but again, not much top end talent there. There's some young guys in there. Toffoli obviously basically just scores against the Canucks. He got one last night, but they're going to be in that 3 to 5 bubble. I think Edmonton's Edmonton like they do every year, man. I mean, they got, if like, look at the stats. I was reading something last night is if Connor McDavid and Draisaitl don't score, they don't win. And I mean, they both scored last night and they still didn't win. And Calgary's only beat Vancouver. I'm not very high on them either. So yeah, I think Vancouver is going to be competing with those 3 teams: Calgary, Edmonton, Montreal. And I think, to me, like I said, Toronto is, like you said, clear cut. They're going to be top of the heave, and Winnipeg, in my opinion, will probably be that number 2 spot. But it's going to be a battle, man. 56 games. I mean, it seems like it's going to be a race, but you know what? The thing is, they're playing each other. Yeah. They're playing each other. So every single game, it's a 4-point game. And you look at the Canucks schedule, luckily, at the second half of the season, it's pretty, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's pretty favorable. I mean, they play Ottawa, I think, 6 times out of the last, 25 games there. So, I mean, there's going to be wins to be had. So I think they'll be in the bubble there, but it's going to be an interesting season. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the Oilers. I think this season is going to be the ultimate test in hockey to see if 2 really good players can carry a team, to a playoffs and have success, right? Because you mentioned Oilers have 2 of the best players in the world, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and not really much else. Like, they don't really have a good outside of forward depth in terms of that, not that much. Their goalies are Koskinen, and they got the Stuart Skinner guy. He doesn't have a 900 save percentage in the AHL. Yeah. Like, it's tough. And the Oilers are going to be interesting to see if those 2 players are so good they can make up for the rest of the team, right? Yeah. But you mentioned it earlier with the series against the Sens. The Canucks were outshot in every single one of those games. No. The reason they won that series handily is mostly because I think the Sens got shit goaltending. Like, they're not Matt Murray and Hogberg or whatever the guy's name is. He didn't have that great of series. Like, I'm on natural stat trick right now. No. The Canucks have given up 265 shots so far this season. Second only to the Edmonton Oilers, who have given up 221. The Canucks have given up 40 more shots than the other second worst team in the National Hockey League. And that's going to be a concern for me. And I'm interested in your thoughts on it. The team defense, like, how do the Canucks fix this other than, just accept that you're going to give up a lot of shots and hope you score 4 or 5 goals a game, which they did, to their credit, against Ottawa.
It's scary. It worries me tremendously because, I mean, if that was any other team, I mean, let's take Calgary. I mean, I think offensively, they're probably other teams left. They're probably the offensively weakest team, I would say. Like, they got Monahan and Goudreau, not much else. But even if you give those chances to Calgary, they're burying 4 or 5 goals. Especially that game, the middle game there, where they allowed 24 shots in the first period. If that's Calgary, that's 4-1. If that's Toronto, that might be 6-7-1. I mean, the other end is, like, I don't know if you've been noticing, I think a lot of the chances they give aren't like that they're playing bad defensively, is they can't get the puck out. They'll make that one extra cute pass. Like, Tyler Myers is famous for that. Like, instead of getting the puck off the boards, he'll try to make the little back pass. He'll fan on it. Quinn Hughes has been accused of that a little bit this year. He hasn't been great, obviously, the last few games. He's really picked it up. I mean, but defensively, I think they haven't been as bad, even though it looks bad on paper. It's been more their own doing of, like, not getting the puck out of their zone, making the extra cute pass. Even Nate Schmidt, I mean, he's giving away pucks, right? Like, he's been better the last couple of games, but against Montreal there, he was horrible. So I think it's something they can correct. Last year, I remember they were just getting hemmed into their own zone because they didn't have the defenseman. They had Tanev, who was great. We all miss him. Yeah, fair enough. But they had an issue. They couldn't get – they weren't fast enough. They didn't have that one quick pass, and they were just a reason of ability. This year, I'm not sure if it's ability. I think it's just boneheaded mistakes, which I think can be fixed. Hopefully will be fixed, but they haven't had a training camp. They haven't had a training camp, but they got Nate Schmidt. They had, obviously, Ben wasn't a major piece of the team last year. He's come in this year. He's playing a little bit more, and he's played well, actually. Hamonic hasn't played in almost a year. So I think that can be self-corrected. I think that could be, those mistakes can be obviously taken down. But yeah, till this point, obviously it is worrisome. They can't do that against good teams. So the worry, again, in a 56 game schedule is they better figure that out quickly. You can't be at game 30 saying, okay, we're finally gelling. You need to gel now. Like, training camp is over. You're 5-5. Your D better be able to get that puck out of the zone without making boneheaded mistakes. And if they can do that, they could probably get those shots down to hopefully in the high 20s, right? Mm-hmm. And then hopefully Demko can be demigod like he was last year in Vegas, and he can prove himself. And hopefully he's been fine. But if you're going to give up breakaways and 3-on-1s and 2-on-1s, what are you going to do? He's not as good as Markstrom is, right? So that's just what we have to live with.
Yeah, and it goes back to what we were talking about before. The Canucks have played 10 games, and all these other teams have games in hand. Like, the runway is essentially there's no runway. Like you have to start picking up points against all these teams, against the teams you mentioned earlier. And you just mentioned it, Demko versus Holtby. That seems to be, it's been a while since we had a goalie controversy in Vancouver, right? Like I miss it. I miss it. Yeah, it's an integral part of being a Canucks fan. Who's going to be the starting goalie? Who would you go with personally? Because, I think it's hard at the end of the day to judge the two games that they both played against, recent games against Ottawa, because they both let in one goal. They both played pretty well. I would go with Demko just because, for me personally, the good old eye test, watching that game that he had against Ottawa, he was a lot more impressive. Like, again, that was a game where they had like 24 shots in the first period, and he kept them in it. So this game, again, we're recording this on Friday. The game against Winnipeg is going to be the real test to see who the coaching staff likes going forward, because that is really the first time this season where there's no back-to-back and you're not playing guys because of rest. You're playing the best guy. So, like, who would you go with?
I couldn't agree with you more. I'd go with Demko. I mean, even in his losses, like that loss against Edmonton, the second game of the season where he came in, and I know they lost 5-2, but those were some glorious opportunities. There was one play where Connor McDavid, I think he scored his second goal, where he walked right in and he took a backhand. Demko saved the first one, and McDavid, poked in the second one. So the thing with that is, to me, like you said, the eye test. Demko's passed the eye test more. Holtby's let in, those breakaway goals where he just doesn't look strong. I mean, Demko's let in those same goals, but to me personally, he looks a little bit more solid. And some of the opportunities that have faced him seem like he's made the harder save. And to me, he should be the goalie of the future. Holtby's here on a 2-year contract.
Yeah.
So if you're the Canuck franchise, if you're the Canuck players, if you're the ownership, you're the management, you need to trust Demko first. Like, Demko better be playing tomorrow. And if Demko, give him a run of games. Give him a run of 3-4 games in a row to me. And if he obviously falters, you have Holtby there. But Holtby should be nothing more than a 1B option for this team, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it goes, I think a big factor is going to be Travis Green. Like, we all know his contract situation. He doesn't have a contract after this season. And it's the problem when you have, the quote unquote lame duck coach in this situation, right? Because he's going to go with whatever goes with the best opportunity to win that game. Future consequences be damned. And that's a situation you go in with a lame duck coach is, I agree. I think Canucks need to get Holtby some more starts because he is the goalie of the future. But at the end of the day, the guy who's in charge of, putting out the team sheet is Travis Green. And he's going to go with, I need to protect my reputation. I need to get wins, because if I have a bad season, I don't know if I'm going to have another head coaching job.
And I don't understand. I mean, I get it to a point, and it's maybe not a conspiracy theory, but I was thinking about it the other day. How do you not give this guy a contract? Like, why is he on his last year? This guy took you basically almost to the conference finals. Even in the years prior to that, he's made players out of certain guys, like even Jake Virtanen. I mean, he is what he is, but he's come a long way. And a lot of that has to be Travis Green. He helped him down in the minors, and I think he's kind of coached him up a bit. And he's done well with even years they haven't been a good team, like prior to last year. So to me, it's just what I kind of was thinking the other day. I was sitting here thinking, I'm like, why doesn't this guy have a contract? And to me I think it's because the ownership is worried about Jim Benning. I think their thinking is like, okay, if this thing goes sideways this year and they have to fire Jim Benning and they bring in another general manager, do they really want to be paying 2 general managers at the same time? And then you've hired this coach to a 3-4 year, whatever contract that Travis Green wants. And then, the first thing a general manager that comes in, his first little out is to fire the coach. Like 2 years down the road, say, hey, the Canucks aren't doing well. Like, okay, I'm going to fire the coach. That's my first little trump card I can throw to save his own butt. So now you're going to be, you're going to be paying 2 coaches. So this ownership group that is, throwing money at the team, hey, listen, it's COVID. I mean, these guys are losing money. They're not having any crowd into the arena. So they're paying these players, but they're not having any revenue back. They may be billionaires, but money's money. I mean, no one's going out there. Me and you, working normal jobs. We don't want to be losing hundreds of dollars a day. Hey, they're in a different world. They're billionaires. They don't want to be losing millions of dollars. So fair enough. Maybe I just think that's what it is. I think they don't want to give this guy a contract where they're going to be maybe in a couple of years paying 2 general managers and perhaps 2 coaches. So they want to see how this year goes, maybe midway, and see if they're in a playoff spot. Then perhaps they can talk about it.
And, speak for yourself that you're working. I got that sweet serve money coming in. I think I'm pretty set for now. But you mentioned a good point. I think the next general manager, if there is a next general manager, and we'll get into this right after this, but I think, the next general manager, he usually likes to pick his coach, right? So if you do have questions about Jim Benning, if you do have questions about his management style, and if he's the guy who can take you to that next level, you may want to hold off on giving that guy a contract extension, because the new guy might come in and say, you know what, I don't think he's the right fit for this team going forward.
Exactly. So yeah, you got to. They're kind of stuck in this. They're kind of stuck in this spot because there's so much hate for Jim Benning. I mean, there's a group of section of fans, and you can say what we want. It does make a difference, especially in this social media age. You think the ownership isn't watching that, like, and how much the media kind of gets involved in it as well. You think they're reporting it. It makes a difference. This isn't like the 90s where, you can turn your TV off, you can turn your radio off, and that's it. No one's the noise isn't going to get to them. The noise is getting to them. They're hearing this. Benning's hearing it. The Aquilinis are hearing it. It makes a difference. And Benning is such one of those bipolar characters, not himself, but just the fan base on this guy. You either love him or you hate him. There's very few people in the middle like, yeah, he's all right, he's okay. No, you either want him fired or you want him to be the general manager. Like, you want him to have an extension. You want him to have you think he's done a great job. He's brought all these young guys in. So they're in a hard spot. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I really wouldn't want to be in Francesco Aquilini's spot besides the money part of it. I mean, I wouldn't want to make that decision right now. It's like, what do you do? Like, you're right on the cusp of perhaps being a contender in a year or two. But does Jim Benning have the ability to sign these guys like Pettersson and Hughes on good contracts to kind of take the next step? Or do you want to bring a new guy in and this guy might be like, hey, you know what? You got a good team, but I want to trade Brock Besser, or I want to trade Bo Horvat. So they're stuck in a bit of a hard spot here. I think they're going to be tough decisions coming up here.
Yeah, and you mentioned a good point about Francesco Aquilini. Like, he's a local owner. Like, he grew up in this city. He grew up a fan from like what I've read. Like, he's not like a owner who maybe lives in another city, and views this team as an investment, and in the sense that, well, there's rumors about Francesco Aquilini selling a team, but he's local. Like, he hears the criticism when it happens. And like, a guy has a Twitter account. People are tagging him all the time when they want like changes and all that stuff. So yeah, it does. I assume, like, all this stuff get to the Aquilini somehow or another. He may not be reading the tweets himself, but he's got assistants who scour the social media and say, oh well, people aren't liking Jim Benning tonight, or however the hell it works. I don't really know, but
But that's it. Like, I don't know if we've ever had an owner like this, and he's another guy that gets a lot of hate. But hey, besides this year, the whole Toffoli thing, I mean, people are saying that he was the reason they don't want to buy Sutter out, whatever it was. This guy spends to the cap. The family, the ownership group, all of them, they spend to the cap every single year. I mean, they give this team they give the general manager, the management side of this team, every opportunity to succeed. I mean, in a normal non-COVID time, if Jim Benning went to him and said, hey, listen, we want to go sign Taylor Hall if they had the cap space for $8 million. I think Francesco Aquilini wouldn't be like, well, no. He'd be like, here you go. Here's a paycheck. You're under the cap. You need the money. We're going to spend to it. He would never say no. So I think I've lived through, I'm not sure I'm sure you've been watching this team for a long time. I'm probably a little bit older than you are, but I've lived through like the John McCaw era, right? I've lived through some of the eras where like, you didn't know if the team was going to be in the city. I mean, we were given threats like, hey, 25 cents moves this team. Like, you got a good owner. We're very lucky, right? We're very, very lucky. But again, the bad side of that is like, he's a fan, like you said. He's like me and you. Could you imagine being a billionaire? I mean, I'd be just like him. My fingers would be all over this team. It's like, hey, why don't you go do this? Why don't you go do that? It's easier said than done from a fan to say, hey, don't get involved. But like you said, he's a fan and he's the owner. So at the end of the day, he can do what the hell damn he pleases, right? What are you can do about it?
Yeah, absolutely. And going to the topic of Jim Benning, you mentioned he's been a polarizing figure for a number of years in this market. Do you think he's actually on a hot seat with ownership? Like, what's your sense of if this guy could actually be removed? I don't think it's realistic for him to just be canned mid-season with COVID and everything. But I do think it could, if this thing goes sideways the rest of the year, there's a possibility that changes could be made. I've made the case. I originally compared Jim Benning to a cockroach, like you can't kill the guy, but I felt that was too harsh. He's more like a cat with 9 lives, like every time the fans think this is the moment Jim Benning is going to be fired, he ends up saving his job somehow, whether that, the ownership gives him a contract extension, the Canucks have a good season. Like, remember back in, I think it was February 2018, he got a contract extension. And this was right after the Canucks drafted Elias Pettersson, right before they drafted Quinn Hughes. And everyone's losing their minds. Like, what the hell? This guy somehow saved his job. And it just seems like every time, like perfect example this past week, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
people are saying, oh, if Jim Benning doesn't, if the team doesn't perform well against Ottawa Senators, this could be it. And what happens? They win 3 straight against Ottawa. They're back to 500. And for the most part, they're back in the playoff race.
Well, look who helped him too. Brandon Sutter, the guy that he gets so much crap for. Brandon Sutter gets a hat trick. I'm like, how the hell does Brandon Sutter get a hat trick? You know why? Because he had, like you said, Jim Benning has 9 lives. He had to save his boss. He had to save his boy. But, I agree. I mean, I think to your earlier question, he is on the hot seat. But again, he is not going to get fired during the season because what's the point? There's no point firing.
It'd be so hard to replace someone like that, mid-season with COVID and everything.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's a you're going to interview people. You're going to interview most of your people probably from the States, just because the landscape population-wise, and most of the guys you're probably going to interview are going to be in the States. You got a 14-day quarantine. You fire Jim Benning tomorrow. Like, what is the point? And a new general manager is going to come in. He's not going to do much. Not in the first, whatever, like say there's 30 games left. He ain't going to change the team much. Whatever he's going to change in the offseason. So to your point, yes, he's on the hot seat, but like you said originally, if he's going to get fired for this season going sideways, it's going to be in the offseason. So if they miss the playoffs, I would be surprised if he comes back next year. I think they will make a change if they do not make the playoffs. And I don't think that makes a difference. I know something TJ we're talking about on the LarschCast last week is like, hey, if he misses it by 2 or 3 points, that's a major difference of him missing it by 15 points. I don't know. The way this fan base reacts and the way, like I said, he's listening, he's watching, he knows they can miss the playoffs by a point on the last game of the year. After how they played last season in the bubble and almost got to the conference finals, anything short of making the playoffs and making at least a somewhat noise, he'll get canned if he misses.
I do agree. I think it is very much black and white with the goals this season, right? Like if the team in general misses the playoffs, I think it's time for the guy's been around for 7 years at that point, right? Like this team is his team. Like there's obviously holdovers like a guy like Alex Edler, but for the most everyone else like are guys he brought in.
Yeah.
So it's tough to say like I need another opportunity if you miss the playoffs this season. But again, you can use a COVID excuse. I can see Jim Benning saying, look, I didn't get a preseason. I didn't get a full off season. I couldn't really make the trades I maybe wanted to because of COVID restrictions. We had a weird schedule. We're playing the same 6 teams all throughout a shortened season. So I can see, Jim Benning somehow saving his job as well because of COVID. It could go either way, but I do think there will be real pressure, like way more than we saw this past week after a bad start if they do miss the playoffs.
You know what? If he was a general manager anywhere else, even the other 6 Canadian cities, maybe not Toronto, maybe the 5 other Canadian cities, I would agree with you. But like all the media people, even like the national media, like Elliot Friedman always jokes about it on Hockey Night there is, listen, man, he goes, the Vancouver fan base, the Vancouver Twitter crowd, he's like, they're special. They're a special crowd. And that's probably, he's putting it nicely because he doesn't want to really say what we are. But in this city, I would be shocked if they miss the playoffs if he keeps his job. I mean, I don't want anyone to get fired, and to me personally, like they always have that Benning bro, bitter bro, the argument, the conversation. Yeah. I was probably more leaning, if you want to call it, Benning bro. I've liked some of the stuff he's done. Like, we always crap on some of the bad stuff, some of the Louis Eriksson contracts and the Brandon Sutter contracts. But if you look back at the time, the Louis Eriksson, most people were praising it because, they were still kind of in that with the Sedins and stuff. You understood it. Brandon Sutter was a pretty reputable player at that point. Mm-hmm. And, they were in the downward. And he's done some good things. I mean, Tyler Mott, what has he got, 5 goals this year? I mean, who did he get him for? Vanek, he got him for free. I mean, there's good things he's done. Right, he's done some good things, and he's obviously his handprints are all over the drafting and the Judd. You can say Judd Brackett did it, but he's a general manager. But this past offseason, when they couldn't sign Tyler Toffoli, that's where I had no issue with them letting go of Markstrom. I had no issue with them letting go of Tanev. I got it. Contracts. You weren't going to give those guys those contracts.
Yeah.
But when you give up Tyler Toffoli after giving up a draft pick and a prospect for him, a somewhat highly touted prospect in Madden, and you don't even attempt to sign this kid. And he got $4.25 million. If Tyler Toffoli would have signed somewhere else for $6.5 million, like Brian Burkett to say, I'll drive him to the airport, no problem. But when you sign this guy for $4.25 million and you don't even make basically a phone call to this guy because you can't throw out, you can't trade out money. I mean, he's got something to answer to, and that's frustrating. And then Toffoli comes in and scores almost back-to-back hat tricks against us. I mean, doesn't look good on him. He doesn't look good on him. So I've started leaning the other way a little bit. I don't want to call myself bitter because I don't think I'm ever bitter, but I'm teeter-tottering, and I think I'm a little bit over here now.
You're straddling the fence.
I'm straddling the
You're
fence. Yeah.
straddling the fence. Yeah, and you know what? That leads me to my next question. I had Brad Thomas on last week, and I asked him this question:
Yeah.
who do you think this team misses more, Jacob Markstrom or Tyler Toffoli? And I'll just preface it with this.
Yeah.
You know, obviously Jacob Markstrom got a shout out his first game against the Vancouver Canucks. And that was a story. Like that's obviously, you know, former goalie that, you know, used to, you know, carry this team, and he carried this team a lot last season, getting a shout out his first game. That's obviously a story. But I don't think many people were too upset with the contract he got from the Flames, right? A lot of people were said like he's a good goalie, but you can't give him that term. In contrast, Tyler Toffoli getting a hat trick, his first game against the Vancouver Canucks in Vancouver. There's just something so visceral and so in your face about that, right? There's just something like this guy scored a hat trick against you, and he almost got a hat trick the next game as well. He got 2 goals and he hit a crossbar late. Could have had 2 straight hat tricks against this team, right? So I guess the question is like, who do you think the team misses more, Markstrom or Toffoli? And which was the more egregious non-signing, Markstrom or Toffoli?
Well, first of all, to your question isn't that such a Canuck thing to happen?
Yeah.
I mean, this team.
I tweeted at the time, like, it's just the most Canuck thing ever. This guy like destroyed his first game back, and a guy we could have signed.
I had a feeling before that game started. I'm like, watch, Markstrom's going to get a hat trick. Markstrom's going to get a shutout against us, just because that's what happens to us. And Tanev had blocked like 8 or 9 shots, which was like the most, you know, a defenseman's ever blocked for Calgary or something. And then Toffoli comes in. To me, like I mentioned earlier, to me, it was the Toffoli. Losing out on Toffoli hurts the most in the long run, because he was a member of that top 6.
Yeah.
I mean, Höglander's done great, right? Okay, Höglander's done awesome, but like in the big picture, a year or 2 down the road, Höglander is going to be great. But does he need to be in that top 6? And if he needs to be in the top 6, Pearson does not need to be in that top 6. I'm not a huge fan of Tanner Pearson. I think he's a middle 6 player. He'd be a great player on your third line.
He's a better suited on a third line on a good team.
Absolutely. So if you had Toffoli there, that just rounds out your top 6 so much better. And the contract was nothing. It was about 4 years or 3 years at $4.25 million.
4 by 4.25.
Yeah, that's nothing. I mean, Markstrom. So like you asked me, who do they miss more? Maybe this year they may miss Markstrom more, right? Because Demko's still kind of coming up. But I think next year and the following years after, I think Toffoli is also only like 27, 20 years old. In the long run, in the next 4 years, I think Toffoli is going to be the one that got away because of the contract, because it was such a small, short-term contract, small money contract. You weren't going to sign Markstrom. You weren't going to do it. I mean, it sucks to lose that guy. Even if we had cap space, we didn't have the Ericssons, the Sutters, the Beagles, the Russells, whatever. You don't want to give a goalie $6 million over 6 years, whatever contract he got from Calgary, and protection in the expansion draft. You know, because then as soon as you did that, people got to realize as soon as you did that, Demko's value went to nothing. No one would give you anything for Demko. If you were going to do that, you would have had to trade Demko last year. And it's a good thing they didn't, because they needed him. So, I mean, yeah, like it looks bad right now because Markstrom's been all right. But I mean, listen, next year, year after that, that contract is not going to look good on Calgary. Tanev, same thing. He had to leave. But that Toffoli contract, I'm telling you, this year, next year, the year after, that's going to bite them, because that guy's a goal scorer. And man, he would have looked good on that top pairing there with Pettersson and Miller, or even playing with Horvat, because you better hope Podkolzin works out. Because if he doesn't, who's your 6th member of that? Who's your like the 3rd member of that second line with Bo Horvat and Höglander? Because you don't have anybody else coming. You don't. Lind, people mention Lind. You know they mention all these.
He's a bottom 6 guy at Matt. From what I've heard.
Yeah, and even Podkolzin, he looks good, but I mean he's not scoring much. Mm-hmm. He's not scoring many goals. I mean, yeah, maybe he can come in and can be one of those kind of tough, strong-headed players, hard guys to come in there, you know, and it might help Bo Horvat. But to play in the top 6, you need to have hands, you need to have skill, you need to score goals. And Toffoli was just, I mean, it bugs me till this day. It bugs me till this day that they weren't able to figure that out, because, man, he looked good with Pettersson and Toffoli. He looks, Pettersson and Miller, he looked so good with those guys. And
in the bubble, especially, he was awesome. Yeah. And, you know, let's talk about Höglander for a bit. I think Nils Höglander, his value for this, first of all, he's looked amazing so far, right? He's looked fantastic. He's been awesome on that second line with Bo Horvat. But I think the value for Nils Höglander this season was, you know, helping Bo Horvat, you know, do more at 5-on-5. Because we all know what Bo Horvat can do on the power play. Like in that bumper spot, he's awesome. He's almost like one of the keys to the Canucks power play is unlocking Bo Horvat in that bumper spot. But, you know, Nils Höglander, he can do a lot more at 5-on-5 offensively than who he's usually playing on that wing with Louis Eriksson, right? Like
Yeah.
if you can switch Bo Horvat from more of a offensive role at 5-on-5 to a kind of shutdown line, that helps the team a lot, because now you got two scoring lines you can count on. So, like, what are your thoughts been on Höglander so far? I think he's been great, personally.
He's amazed me. I mean, when he was coming in, I knew some about him. I knew obviously he was gifted offensively, but what I've been impressed, especially yesterday, like he's good in the forecheck. He's good in the corners. Like, he's not a huge guy, but he's strong. He's got strong legs. It's hard to knock him off the puck. And I think he's just gaining confidence. And you noticed it a little bit. He tries some of those little cheeky little plays through the legs or little spinoramas. I think we're going to see more of that. I think he's kind of like just kind of learning the ropes. He's kind of learning his teammates. And then the teammates are going to kind of, give him some confidence. Say, hey, man, kid, go try that. Don't be nervous. Don't be scared to make a mistake. I think it was against Montreal where he kind of tried something and he kind of messed up and Montreal went the other way and scored. And Pettersson was on the bench. And I think Miller were on the bench, and they're kind of like patting him on the back to say, hey, listen, kid, don't worry about it. You need these guys to go try things. So offensively, he's been great, but I've enjoyed the fact that defensively, he hasn't been a liability. He's made some mistakes that any rookie's going to make, but he's back. He's usually the first guy back when he makes a mistake, skating back when they lose the puck in the offensive zone. So that's good. I mean, the number one thing to that is he's being played by Travis Green. Years we've seen, like, he won't play young kids. He won't play Jake Virtanen when in other years. And, when there's like 10 minutes left in the game, but you notice he doesn't take Höglander off that line, even if they're up by a goal or up by 2 goals or down by a goal. He lets him play in all situations. So he's got the coach's trust. So he's exceeded my expectations majorly. I think he's doing great. And I didn't think he was going to be able to kind of stick here in the top 6, but he's doing it. And man, all the power to him.
I still want to see a Niels Höglander lacrosse goal at some point this season.
I
want to see him at least try it. Like this guy, I saw that, we've seen the clips online for a few months now, and for the past, year and a bit, this guy's destroying goalies with the lacrosse move. Let's see it. Like, hopefully he gets more confidence because of this start, and he tries it against one of these teams. I want to see a Höglander lacrosse goal.
I think it's coming, and I think it's coming soon. I'm not sure he's going to score on it, but the attempt is coming. I think within the next, within the next 15 to 20 games, kid's going to try it. He's gaining confidence every game, and look what he's doing. He's getting some points. And if you ever played hockey, I played beer league hockey, like the bottom of the barrel, right? Like, but it's amazing what points will do for you. Like, if you get like 50 chances to score, but you don't get a goal or you don't get an assist, it does nothing. But when that 1 point, and he's the last couple of games, Pearson's actually knocked a couple in, and Höglander's got some assists on him. Hey, he's getting confidence. I think he's learning that he can play at this level and he can compete with these guys. And I love to see it. He's going to do it. He's going to try it for sure.
And another thing that Höglander really provides for this Canucks team is a good forward on a cheap contract. Yeah, like that might be overlooked with his play, but he's on an ELC for this year and the next 2 years. That's very valuable considering the cap situation the Canucks are in.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the one issue I have with this team. Now they got Höglander here and they got Pokozin coming in. They're going to have that opportunity. My hope always was, I always feel like any legit team, any team that's going to win a Stanley Cup or compete for a Stanley Cup, they got 2 windows. You got the window when you got your kids, the star kids, obviously the Pettersson, the Hughes, especially. You got them on these contracts that are basically nothing. You got them on these $750,000 million that they mean nothing, right? And then you can bring in some star players or like one valuable piece to kind of add, and they can go on a cup run, right?
Yeah.
And then your second window is when these guys are obviously making the big money and they're in their prime. They're 26, 27 years old, and you can bring in the old veteran guy for a cheap contract. My worry is that the Canucks have kind of missed that boat for the first one. Yeah. Unless obviously Höglander's come in and Pokozin comes in, hopefully, and they come in kind of like to a certain extent that PD and Hughes came in. Obviously, maybe not at that level because those guys to me are superstars. But if they even come in like a Horvat and a Besser level, that's huge because that kind of opens up their window a little bit earlier with these kids on small contracts. So let's hope that window kind of gets opened up a little bit quicker than it may, because of obviously the cap issues the Canucks are going to have in the years to come, because you need these guys to contribute, because Brandon Sutter, Beagle, Bargy not even playing, Louis Eriksson. They're not going to contribute, especially when these guys are going to be playing the Jets and the Leafs and the Oilers, better teams in this division, right? So fingers crossed.
Yeah, absolutely. So one guy that was scratched last night at the time of recording was Jake Virtanen. On a scale of 1 to 10, how done are we with Jake Virtanen at this point? Let's be real.
15.
Really? Sorry, but you've shattered it.
I'm just, the thing with Jake Virtanen is like his frustration, my frustration of Jake Virtanen is a different frustration. Like I get frustrated with a with a Louis Eriksson or a Beagle or a Brandon Sutter, but that's different. This kid has all the potential in the world, all the potential. You can't compare him to an Adam Gaudette. You know, Adam Gaudette he wasn't a top 5-6 pick or whatever, right? Like this kid was a top pick, and he's a big kid. He's huge. He's over 6 feet tall. You know, whatever, 200 pounds. He's got speed. He skates. If he wants to skate, like who's going to stop him? If he wants to shoot, who's going to stop him? If you're going to push people around, who's going to stop this kid? And I'm not sure I think is it a mental thing? Is it a hockey? I think it's a hockey IQ thing. I just don't think he's a very smart player. But if you're not a very smart player, put some effort into it. Put some effort into your game. Start running people over, and he just refuses to do that. So, I mean, I'm personally done with him. I mean, how low can his value be right now? I mean, I think if the Canucks were smart, and they've always had this issue, is they never trade people when they're on, you know, the top of the hill, when they're top of the mountain. He had like 18 goals last year. And you know the kind of guy he is. You know the coaches know what he is, the general manager. That's when you trade him. You can't trade him now. I mean, he's got 1 goal. The goalie, Holtby, has as many points as Virtanen does here in the first 8 games. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you can't trade him. He's worth trash right now. So he wasn't in the last game. So you're almost forced to play this guy. Because, yeah, you don't want to maybe perhaps have him on your team, but you don't want to give him away for like a 7th round draft pick either. You need to get some value off this kid, right? Like whether that be packaging him up for a defenseman or, you know, getting a 3rd round pick. I mean, his value's not very high, but I'm personally done with him. I'm kind of done making fun of him on Twitter because it's not even funny anymore. It's just I kind of do it just to poke at a couple of guys that love Jake Virtanen. I think we know both who we're talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to name drop him, but like, man, like, come on, man, Jake. He's a local kid, but I'm sick of his hockey IQ, and I'm sick of his work ethic. Like, pick one of them up.
Yeah, and you know what? The point that I realized, okay, I think I'm forever done with Jake Virtanen is when he dumped the puck in at 3-on-3. I was just like, okay, that's it. I can't. I don't know where else can we go with here with Jake Virtanen? Like the whole point of 3-on-3 is puck possession. You can't dump the puck in, man.
And I think we tweeted each other back and forth there because I posted that too. It's like I've never seen anybody do that. And people that
it was wild. I was honestly shocked.
And the pro Jake Virtanen, no, he was stuck. I'm like, listen, then you throw it back to your goalie. You know, the other end of the ice, you throw it back to your goalie, the defenseman jumps on, and now here you got puck possession again. Like maybe like I was blown away where he just kind of threw it in the corner. I'm like, does this guy think it's the second period, 5-on-5? What's he doing? Like, and it almost cost him. They almost went the other way. Montreal almost went the other way immediately and scored. Like, it's just the dumbest thing I've ever seen anybody do. And that's what I posted. I'm like, I'm not even sure if it's skill. I think he has the skill, but his hockey IQ is just, you know, next to nothing because, I mean, you got to be stupid to do that. I'm sorry. I mean, it's a dumb play.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes it even the more wild that essentially Jim Benning chose Jake Virtanen over Tyler Toffoli, right? Like that was essentially a trade. Obviously they had to move a bit more money, you know, to get Tyler Toffoli signed if they wanted, but to choose Jake over Tyler Toffoli from what we've seen so far is just, it's indefensible. Like, I don't know how you can spin that.
Did you notice, like I was watching the game yesterday and somebody tweeted, I was laughing about it. And they're like, you know what? I didn't notice that Virtanen wasn't playing till the 3rd period because he's been as missing as he has been in the games that he has played. Yeah. And it's true. Even in the games he's played, and I don't even say this to poke at people that I tweet at to make fun of him. I wasn't making fun of him. I genuinely haven't noticed him in like 15 minutes. Like he hasn't done anything. And, you know, it hasn't been penalty kills or power plays. So it's not like he's not coming out. I haven't seen him. I mean, I noticed Roussel more, probably because he's taking a stupid penalty. But I mean, I noticed these guys, Beagle, I noticed more than Virtanen. He's out there, you know. Ma obviously has been great, but I don't notice the kids. So I mean, if you're playing in the bottom 6, at least be noticed. And he hasn't done that. So it's like,
at least throw your body around or something like that. And he hasn't really even done that.
Do something. I mean, like, I just don't get it. Like, if you're that big and you hit somebody, it's probably not going to hurt Jake. Like, do something. Hit somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to ask actually about the LarschCast. Now I had Tej on back in, I want to say last March, right as the season got put on pause. So I think I know like how the podcast started and everything, but since then you guys are on Sportsnet 650. Like how did that come about? And that's gotta be pretty cool. I'm sure like you grew up listening to sports radio like myself, right? Like, it was a cool experience being on Sportsnet 650 this past Saturday.
Yeah.
But like, what was the process like getting on Sportsnet 650?
You know what? It happened really quick. We've had personalities on from both stations. And we always get like, oh, you guys just Sportsnet 650, you're Pro 6. We were never Pro 650, Pro Sportsnet 650 even prior. We had, the other radio station on multiple times. TSN guys on. We've had national guys on like James Duffy, and they're great. We got no issue with anybody. But we've had like obviously Walker on. We've had Dan Riccio on, Randy Janda, all these guys, right? They're good guys, and we had CMAC on. So I think it kind of stemmed from the fact that when we had these guys, especially in studio, like the Walkers of the world, the Riccios of the world, we've had Brendan Batchelor on the show. After we'd speak obviously on air on the pod, but then even after the pod, we kind of hang out and talk, and go to the bar, have a couple of drinks. Obviously, pre-pandemic.
Yes, pre-COVID. We have to
pre-COVID. Yeah, we haven't even been in the studio. Unfortunately, we haven't even seen each other since this whole thing started, right? So even since we've been on Sportsnet 650, we've been doing it from home remotely. So it's kind of weird. But so I think it kind of stemmed from that, and they kind of obviously talked to their boss or CMAC, and then we had him on. And what we do is one of the questions we ask in our rapid fire when we had anybody on is like one of the questions was, hey, where do you see the LarschCast in the next 5 years? And I think his answer was hosting a show for me on the radio. Yeah. And we're like, yeah, we're in. And I think like 2 weeks later, I think he contacted Tej, because Tej is like I don't want to call him the leader because I would go to his head, but he's kind of like the kind of guy that takes care of all that kind of stuff. So, hey, he asked us, hey, would you guys like to come on a bit of a trial basis on Saturday morning, especially during the bubble? They wanted to kind of give us a chance, and it kind of just went from there. I know, we get a lot of hate for that, but, because none of us we're not radio personalities. We all have day jobs. We all have our own personal lives, and we kind of just do this for fun, right? But it's been a great experience, man. I mean, CMAC's been great. Like all the hosts on Sportsnet 650 have been great. And, we kind of do it for fun. It's not a job. Like it could end tomorrow. Like this isn't our profession. We take it. We don't take it lightly, but at the same time, we appreciate the actual people that are in this profession that do this for a living. Those are the real guys, right? Those are the guys that went to school for this. Those are the guys that work hard. They're studying for this and stuff, and they're, really researching. We do this as fans. We don't do this from the media point of view. We got nothing to gain for this. Even when we're on, and if you've ever listened, TJ is just, the sky's blue. He is the most, like, we know the media guys, they try to be in the middle of the road. They try to have both perspectives. We're fans. Like, if we were playing Vegas last year, media guys won't be like, I hate Vegas. I was on the radio. I'm like, I hate the Vegas Golden Knights. I hope Ryan Reeves gets, nailed into the boards. Like, that's what I think makes us unique is most of us are homers, not as bad as TJ, but we're all fans, and about 95%.
He's at a different level, to be honest.
We are. He's at a different level. Nothing can go wrong. Anything Benning does, or the Canucks do, it's great. We're going to win the cup every year. Like I always joke with him. He reminds me of a 5-year-old Nav. When I was a kid, and I, asked my cousin, like, why don't the Canucks just trade their crappy players for Wayne Gretzky? Like, why don't we trade a 5th round pick for Wayne Gretzky? You know what I mean? Like, just silly, like childish stuff. So I love him for it, but it's been a good experience, and we're having fun. We'll see where the ride takes us. I think we enjoy Saturday mornings a lot more than we enjoy Sunday evenings, because it's hard to watch football all day and talk sports. But yeah, Saturday mornings are fun, and we'll see how far it goes. But it's been fun so far.
Yeah, and it's been cool to see kind of like a local podcast get their own radio show. Like that's kind of to me, like just as someone who's doing a podcast for a local show to get a significant radio airtime, and obviously a bunch of these podcasters, myself included, obviously, like we there's spots on radios on all stuff, but no one's really had like their own show, which is cool. Like a local podcast getting their own show on a sports radio station, it legitimizes it, and it seems like there is a lot of talent for Canucks podcasts in this city. And it's cool that one of them, has an opportunity on sports radio.
And that's just it. And we're not. I want to be careful how I word this. We're not pioneers. But at the same time, like there's a lot of people out there. The people that love us, and there's people that hate us that don't like the positive approach that we try to take. Fair enough, man. You have the right to your opinion. And people will be like, why are you guys on Sportsnet 650? Just because you guys are house radio and you guys are the positive approach? No, man. I think you guys should look at it at this point as like, maybe we've opened the door. Like we've kind of gone in there and, we've done a decent enough job, maybe not a great job, even though I think we have. But listen, even if you think we've done an average job, hopefully now they're like, hey, these guys are pretty decent. Why don't we bring Nick on now? Why don't we bring, these guys on? Try this other podcast on Sunday mornings. Try this podcast on Saturday night. Because truth be told, I think the future of radio, the future of broadcasting is podcasts. I mean, radio.
I wholeheartedly agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Because everyone needs a voice, and radio is never going to die. Like, obviously the main guys, that go to school for this, they're never going to go away, and full on them. Right. But with social media, everyone has a voice. Everyone has a voice, and they have the right, through the right avenues, to voice that opinion. Right. As long as they're being, respectful in those opinions, they have a right to voice their opinions. Obviously, Twitter is a little bit different, but when you're on the radio, as long as you're being respectful, then it's your full right to have that opportunity and to be on it. And if that's what you're passionate about, man, listen, let's do it. Let's reach out. You know what? We'd like to welcome these guys on our show to have your voice on the radio, so these guys can hear, like maybe Sportsnet guys or the other radio station TSN guys haven't heard you before. Maybe we're a way that you guys can come on and have your voices heard, and maybe you guys can get a show and, you know, succeed in what you guys are doing. So that's all we take. Again, we take ourselves very lightly, but we don't take the opportunity lightly at all.
Yeah, that's very well said. So so Nav, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been a lot of fun. Hopefully you can do it again sometime.
Anytime, man, Nick. It was fun. It's fun to talk to other people besides the normal guys that I'm talking to, different opinions. So yeah, I enjoyed, you know, tweeting with you back and forth there on Twitter. You're always fun to engage with, and man, wish you all the best there on Sportsnet 50. I know you were on last week. Hopefully that's just the beginning.
Onwards and upwards.
There you go. Absolutely, buddy. Thank you for having me on.